3 sinister, spine-chilling true horror stories revealed. Unexplainable end of summer hauntings. Claire's heart raced as she wiped down the counter at the diner. Outside, the nights were growing colder, and as the summer ebbed away, it carried with it whispers of something sinister lurking just under the surface of their sleepy little town. The flickering fluorescent lights above her hummed ominously, echoing her growing anxiety. Little did she know, the shadows cast were not just from the dim bulbs overhead, but also from dark secrets buried deep beneath the familiar facade of their suburban life. Earlier, Mrs. Johnson, their superstitious neighbor, had called with warnings about strange occurrences at Ethan's school. Claire brushed off the tales of glowing apparitions and distant moans as local folklore, something to spice up conversation during backyard BBQs. But as she drove home that night, the ghostly silhouette of the ancient water tower loomed in the rearview mirror, an ever-present reminder that darkness lingered just within reach. Clutching her car keys tightly, she approached her front door, dreading what she would find inside. The house creaked under its own weight. "Ethan?" she called, but her voice fell flat, swallowed by the stillness. An uneasy knot twisted in her stomach as she stepped further in and found him standing in the darkened hallway, eyes wide, body trembling. "Mom, I heard whispers," he stuttered, his voice barely a whisper. "From the school, there's something in there." Panic flushed through her like ice water, prickling her skin. Whispers? In the school? The very place where a boy had vanished years ago without a trace, leaving only terrified memories and hushed conversations among the townsfolk. The thought sent a wave of dread washing over her. Suddenly, the mundane rhythms of their small town were tinged with more than just superstition. They concealed truths that could shatter the safety she had clung to. She tried to reassure Ethan, to silence her own simmering fears with maternal strength, but the shadows grew longer with every moment, stretching from the corners of the room, creeping down the walls toward her, whispers creeping along with them. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Clenching her fists, Claire vowed to investigate. Darkness cloaked the school's exterior, and the wind sent shivers through her as she stepped inside, the heavy door groaning in protest. Each echoing step carried her deeper into an abyss, teasing her with the chilling scent of something rotting and forgotten. Whispers beckoned from every corner. She thought she glimpsed a figure, a tall shadow watching, waiting, lurking. "Mom?" A voice sliced through the gloom, and it was Ethan's, but so different, so otherworldly. She raced toward the sound, her heart hammering painfully against her chest. The custodial closet loomed ahead, hinting at secrets sealed behind its decaying door. She reached for the knob, but before she could twist it, the lights cut out and a suffocating darkness enveloped her. The whispers came alive, a cacophony surrounding her, entwining with her breaths, pulling her down. Claire realized too late that the truth she sought might not save them, but only draw them deeper into a nightmare of broken trust and fractured memories. The darkness had a hunger, and it was calling their names. What awaited them on the other side of the door? A fleeting glance back showed her nothing but shadows weighing heavily in the air. Unseen horrors loomed just out of reach, reminding her that some secrets were meant to stay buried. In that miserable moment, she understood the true terror of the night was just beginning. The voices swirled around Claire like a tempest, filling the air with a ghostly melody that both chilled and intrigued her. She pressed her ears shut, but the whispers slipped through, skimming the surface of her consciousness. They didn't just speak. They beckoned. Fighting the rising tide of fear, she steadied her breath, gripping the doorknob tightly. Claire knew she had to find Ethan and pull him away from whatever darkness was unfolding within the school's depths. Yet the malevolent force held her in its clutches, a relentless grip that urged her to surrender to the unknown. "Ethan," she called, her voice cracking, echoing back hollow and distant against the oppressive silence. A soft, trembling whimper drifted toward her from behind the door, making her stomach drop. With a surge of adrenaline, Summer's fading warmth seemed to slip further away. She twisted the knob. To her surprise, it budged without protest, an invitation rather than a barrier. As the door creaked open, the chilling scent of decay flooded her senses, catching in her throat like a knife. "Mom," Ethan pleaded, his voice quavering as shadows danced around him. Claire rushed inside, arms reaching for him. He stood in the middle of the room, staring into an ink-black corner that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. "Don't look there," she yelled, pulling him away just as something shifted in the darkness, the unmistakable sound of something dragging across the floor. Their relief turned to panic as the door slammed shut behind them with a deafening thud. The lights flickered back to life, casting a sickly yellow hue over peeling walls, but the brightness only heightened the grotesque sight before them. Piles of forgotten belongings strewn across the concrete floor, old textbooks, weathered papers, and the eerie sight of a rusted bell jar that once contained a trophy of some forgotten victory. Every breath Claire took carried a weight of dread. "We have to get out," she whispered, but an unseen force pressed down on her, filling the air with an impossible heaviness. Seconds felt like hours as their eyes adjusted to the harsh light. A shiver crawled down her spine. There, etched into the wall, were names. Hundreds of them, scrawled messily, each representing a child linked to unspeakable events and vanished dreams. Ethan's eyes went wide with terror as he traced the names with his finger, the faintest hint of wetness smudging the letters. "Mom, what if he trailed off?" The fear boiling beneath his skin. Claire's heart pounded, cold dread pooling in her gut. The last whispers she heard before entering the anguished cries of lost children surfaced, filling her thoughts with something she didn't want to face. Just then, the lights flickered profoundly. The shadows shifted, coalescing into darker forms that slithered closer. Ethan gasped, eyes glued to the corner. A small figure, no taller than a closet door, stepped limply into the light. A child pale as moonlight, bound in chains of darkness that seemed to pulse with bitterness. "Help," it whimpered, stepping closer. Claire felt her blood run cold, yet she couldn't look away. Panic clawed at her throat as she realized the truth in that small voice. It was the voice of many lost souls, its plea a choral echo of despair. Before she could react, the child lunged forward. Claire pushed Ethan behind her, heart racing into overdrive as she braced for the worst. What had she stumbled into? They were trapped in a web of nightmares woven through time, and whatever lingered inside the darkness, it was hungry. The cold weight of realization compressed on her chest as she whispered the horrifying question. "What if we can't get out?" The answer came not from her lips, but from the surrounding shadows, closing in with a chilling gust that extinguished the last of the light. Would they come face to face with their worst fears? What awaited them in the ravenous blackness? Claire's pulse thundered in her ears, drowning out the haunting whispers that echoed around them. The light flickered again, presenting a grotesque circus of shadows that played along the crumbling walls. She felt Ethan's warmth pressed against her back, his breath quick and shallow, a shared terror igniting in both of them. "What are you?" Claire breathed, her voice barely a whisper, straining against the oppressive darkness. The child no. The apparition stood before them, eyes wide and hollow, reflecting nothingness. Each second stretched, suffocating them in its grasp. The air thickened, swirling around her like fog, riddled with the musty scent of mold and despair. "Help," it murmured once more, the echo of hundreds of voices layered beneath that single word. The sound was a knife twisting in her gut, dragging her deeper into the nightmare. Claire took a shaky step back, and the world around her crumbled as shadows swirled aggressively, a whirlwind of despair threatening to absorb them whole. "Stay behind me, Ethan," she hissed, clenching her fists. A wave of determination surged through her, battling her fear as she instinctively searched for a way out. "We need to find a door." Together, they sidestepped the shadowy figure, its chains clinking ominously like a prison sentence fulfilled. They darted left, then right, navigating the maze of chaos while cries of help morphed into shrill wails that pierced the air. Each sound wrapped around Clara's throat, squeezing tighter, though the panic hadn't fully gripped Ethan yet. He seemed captivated by the darkness, too engrossed in what might happen next. "Mom!" he yelled, suddenly breaking free from her hold, stumbling towards the dark corner where the apparition lingered. "Wait, Ethan, no!" The urgency in her voice shattered through the confinement. But the boy halted, transfixed. Claire reached for him, her legs feeling heavy, as if pulled down by unseen weights. "Mom," it said. His voice trembled, eyes shimmering with a mix of fear and empathy that struck her like a blow. "It wants to go home." Home? Clara's heart sank further, a world of dread expanding within her, filling the void in her chest. She felt the edges of sanity slip. Knowing the truth hidden in the darkness was more devastating than she could bear. It was the kind of truth that sacrificed souls, leaving them condemned to roam forever, lost children yearning for release. Suddenly, the lights blinked out, plunging them into suffocating blackness. Claire grabbed Ethan's wrist, a frail tether in the consuming void. The weight of the shadows pressed down harder, wrapping around them like icy fingers. Just then, an ear-splitting snarl fractured the air, a growl that sent waves of horror racing down her spine. Something was approaching, prowling, hungry. Ethan tugged, his small figure quaking with fear as he felt the cold breaths of the unseen creature. Shouted Ethan, his voice cracking as he spun around, panic dawning. What do we do? Though every instinct urged her to protect him, Clara's mind spun with dread. All thoughts of escape collided with a gruesome realization: what if facing the shadows was the only way to understand the spirits trapped therein? What if only then could they find a way out? What if we can't get back? Clara's own voice trembled, the question echoing back at them from the surrounding darkness. A deep, throaty laugh rippled through the air, chilling them both, reminiscent of broken dreams and lost childhoods. It was an invitation or a warning. With heart racing, Claire steeled herself, squinting against the dark as creeping shapes began to materialize. "What do you want from us?" she yelled, her voice simmering with defiance, ready to confront the terror that lay ahead. But the only answer that came was the silence of the shadows, thickening until it became nearly tangible, infinitesimal and foreboding. And the depths of that silence, another shrill cry echoed, a voice familiar yet distorted, calling for her. "Mom! Help me!" As the shadows lurched forward, ready to claim them, Claire knew the moment of truth had arrived. Would they unveil the dreadful secret that had bound the hungry spirits within? Or would they themselves become part of the darkness, lost forever in the silence? The sharp howl of the wind pierced through the oppressive silence, slicing into Claire and Ethan's hearts. The shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own, reaching out like ghastly hands yearning to snatch them away. Clara's muscles tightened, ready to spring, but every instinct screamed for stillness, an unspoken promise that any sign of weakness could invite their doom. "Ethan, hold my hand," she shouted, her voice at war with the encroaching darkness. But the boy, still mesmerized by the flickering specter, stood frozen, his tiny frame illuminated under the deathly light seeping through a cracked window. "Mom, listen," he whispered, his tone soft as cotton, reverberating faintly against the walls. "They're saying something like a riddle." Claire pressed herself against the damp brick wall, desperately straining her ears. The whispers grew, a cacophony of sorrow threading through her mind. They were fragmented phrases, barely decipherable, as if the walls themselves were recounting their grim histories. "Find us. Free us. Too lost. Too far." Panic knotted in her stomach. What did they want? What sacrifice would it demand? Suddenly, a thundering crack echoed, followed by the furious patter of footsteps. The beast was closer. From the corner of her eye, shimmers of movement danced in the dark. "No!" Claire yelled, again reaching for Ethan, but he remained transfixed, staring into the abyss, where the apparition seemed to beckon him, its hollow cheeks stretching into a miserable grin. "Ethan, please!" Her heart pounded as she forged forward, forcing herself past a wall of fear. The cold, clammy air turned sharper, biting at her skin as she lifted him into her arms just in time. The shadows lunged forward, their hungry whispers rising in a chilling roar. With renewed determination, Claire bolted, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She didn't know where she was going, only that movement was life. Adrenaline surged through her veins, fueling each frantic step as they plunged deeper into that labyrinth of ghosts and despair. Shadows swirling behind them, hungry for companionship. Why are they sad? Ethan's small voice broke through, quivering with innocence. What do they want from us? I don't know. Claire snapped, the truth clawing at her throat like a wild beast. They weren't just trapped spirits. They were lost souls, echoes of what once was, begging for understanding or, more terrifyingly, companionship. The specters swirled in disgruntled rage, their forms shifting into grotesque caricatures of lost children, faces marred by pain, eyes glinting with madness. Claire squeezed Ethan tighter, her heart hammering in her chest. Help us, unbind us, their voices layered together, a haunting chorus that twisted around her like ropes tightening with each pulse beat. What's unbinding? Ethan asked, his innocent curiosity intertwining with terror. Claire's stomach churned. What if their liberation demanded something far darker? In a sudden motion, the room lurched, light and shadow contorting violently. The very air turned thick, shrouding them in a miasma of despair. Shadows surged, intertwining, and Claire felt their icy fingers graze her skin. She recoiled, whispering a litany of prayers, each heartbeat a deafening drum in the chaos. Mom! Ethan cried, panic surging anew as they began to stall. Shadows looming in, sharpened and impatient. Just as they reached what seemed like a solid wall, an ethereal shimmer erupted above, illuminating a door, a stark portal amidst the chaos. Claire's heart leaped, but doubt gnawed at her resolve. What if it leads to worse? She murmured, her pulse racing in a cacophony of fear and desperation. But the shadows whispered back, their voices sweetly poisonous. Together, freedom. At last Claire's instinct screamed, was this their escape or their demise? With trembling hands, she took a step toward the glowing doorway, uncertainty twisting within her. Ethan, are you ready? The boy's gaze clung to the apparition, torn between the hope of escape and the eerie comfort of the familiar. And then, somewhere deep within the shadows, a cackle sounded, resonating from the depths of the dark. Dare you come closer? Dare you know the truth? It echoed like a grim challenge, vibrating through the air. The door loomed before them, a barely visible escape wrapped in darkness, a hope tinged with terror. And Claire had only one choice: what awaited them beyond that threshold? Would freedom truly be within reach, or had they stepped into a trap that would seal their fate? As Claire stepped closer to the door, that otherworldly glow pulsed like a heartbeat, inviting yet menacing. The whispers grew louder, jagged shards of sound clawing at her sanity. Dare you know the truth? Echoed again, the voice thick with malice, wrapping around her like a suffocating cloak. Ethan squirmed in Claire's grasp, his small face twisted with conflicting emotions. Mom, I don't like it here, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the growing tempest of shadows. The warmth of his body was slipping away, like sand through her fingers. Stay close, buddy. Just hold on to me. Claire's voice wavered, filled with fear. Something in the air shifted. It was warm and cold all at once, a sickly sweet scent of decay lurking just beyond the threshold. The ground beneath them trembled. Suddenly, a ghastly figure took form among the shadows, a tall, looming apparition with eyes cold and void. Its mouth curved into a grotesque smile, cruel and sharp. Your boy is curious, it hissed, the sound curling around them like smoke. Isn't that right, little one? Get away from him. Claire screamed, her heart pounding like a war drum. The creature leaned closer, an ethereal breath brushing against Ethan's cheek. Time slowed. Every heartbeat felt like a thud of impending doom. You'll understand soon enough what unbind really means. The figure's voice was thick with promise and threat, as if it reveled in her fear. Ethan stared up, the innocence fading from his eyes. The bond between them felt fragile, teetering at the edge of darkness. Mom, the fear in his voice shattered her resolve. Could she let the darkness consume them both? She couldn't. She wouldn't. They had to escape, even if it meant stepping into the unknown. Now, Ethan, she shouted, urgency laced with desperation. With a swift motion, Claire pushed forward, dragging Ethan through the shimmering doorway. The moment they crossed the threshold, the world behind them twisted violently, shadows flaring in rage. The door slammed shut with a thunderous crash, silence enveloping them like a heavy blanket. They stood in a dimly lit chamber. The walls flickered with the ghostly remnants of flickering images, lost children, chained and weeping. Claire stumbled back, her breath catching in her throat. No, 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 she gasped, the horror washing over her in unstoppable waves. Are we safe? Ethan asked, his brows knitted tight, eyes wide like saucers. Shoo! Claire hushed, trying to stay calm as terror gnawed at her gut. She could still feel the shadows lurking just outside, whispering their sadistic invitations. We need to find another way out. Their surroundings felt alive, the air thick with despair. The whispers from just beyond the door now echoed in her mind, mingling with the cries of the lost souls trapped within the walls. Free us, help us. Claire scanned the room, searching for an escape. The walls were adorned with strange symbols, grotesque and pulsating with a maddening glow. What is this place? She muttered, dread settling into her bones. Suddenly, a soft touch wrapped around her ankle. She looked down to see a small, delicate hand protruding from the floor, a childish hand, reaching for her. No, Claire gasped, stumbling backward. But the hand tightened its grip, the childish face appearing, twisted with torment. Please, help us. Unbind us. Claire felt her heart lurch. Their desperation clawed at her conscience, a siren call to her humanity. But a dark thought struck her as she looked at Ethan's terrified face. What if freeing them came at a price? What if the horrors of this place demanded a sacrifice, something she couldn't manage to bear? Mom! Ethan cried, tugging at her arm, pulling her back from the brink of their dilemma. We need to go now. But which way? The door was sealed and the cries from the walls grew into a frantic howl. The room seemed to shift, each corner morphing, each sound enveloping them deeper into a maze of despair. Clara's mind raced, torn between risking it all for these lost souls or saving her son. Then the whispers intensified, swirling into a deafening storm. Dare you seek the truth? She turned to Ethan, who clutched her tightly, confusion etched into every feature. Mom, what do we do? In that moment, she realized she had to choose. The darkness pressed in around them, hungry for an answer. With shadows creeping ever closer, Claire knew time was running out. What would her answer be amidst the chaos? Would she gamble on the whispers or fight to escape? The shadows shifted, waiting. The air was thick with tension, every whisper raising the hairs on the back of Claire's neck. She squeezed Ethan's small hand, but his fingers were ice cold, his body trembling. They stood at the edge of an unmarked abyss where despair reigned supreme. Mom, it's going to get us, he whimpered, his voice barely a breath. I won't let that happen, she said, voice steadying herself against the quaking terror. The walls closed in as if the room itself was alive, hungry for them. An ominous pulse came from the very stones, rhythmically matching the pounding in her chest. Suddenly, the childish hand released her ankle, retreating like a wisp of smoke. Claire gasped, holding her breath. The flickering images on the walls twisted into grotesque depictions, children with pleading eyes and twisted forms, trapped in an eternal dance of anguish. They were more than just echoes. They were memories, and they knew her deepest fears. Mom, look, Ethan pointed, his eyes wide with horror. A dark silhouette loomed where the doorway had once been, the figure emerging like an echo from the depths of despair. It was the same haunting presence that had taunted them before, its features blending into the gloom like a nightmare refusing to disperse. Are you ready to know what unbind means? The words dripped from its mouth like poison, constricting the air around Claire, thickening her breath. Get back, she screamed, putting herself in front of Ethan, feeling the weight of protective resolve pushing against the dread. "Mom, I can't breathe," he gasped, his small chest heaving as panic crept in. The voice grew louder, feeding on their fear, a malignant melody wrapping around her sanity. "Remember her, little one? The girl from your past?" She's waiting. Memories surged, glimpses of laughter, innocence lost, and a face she tried to forget. Claire felt the air grow heavier, the suffocating truth crashing over her like waves. "No, leave him alone," she yelled, voice wavering between defiance and despair. "Help them know peace, and your truth shall be unbound." A simple touch it beckoned. The shadows around them began to undulate, revealing faces twisted in torment, mouths moving in silent cries, reaching for her, beckoning with anguished eyes. For an instant, Clara's grip loosened on Ethan. He stumbled backward, eyes wide with fear, grasping at the air like a drowning child. "Mom!" Frantically, she scooped him back into her arms, holding him close. The walls reverberated with their cries. "Don't look!" Claire shouted, desperate to shield him from the horrors. But Ethan's little head turned, and in that brief moment he saw. A scream pierced through the murky air, a distant wail of a child echoed from the shadows, a sound that sliced through the chaos. Claire clenched her teeth, feeling her heart plummet as the shadows stretched, swirling in a frenzied dance toward them. "Turn away, we have to run," she urged, the urgency tearing through her voice. Ethan pulled at her shirt, panic etched into his features. "Where, Mom? Where do we go?" The walls felt like they were closing in, and with a deep breath, Claire focused. "Find the symbols," she whispered, recognizing they could be the key to escape amidst the storm of despair. But her mind raced. Could the darkness have a grip even on those symbols? The creature lashed out from the shadows, reaching for Ethan. The air crackled with a twisted energy, a promise of horror. "Join them, little boy," it hissed, hunger lacing its words. In that moment, Claire felt the weight of 1,000 souls pleading within the walls, a swarm of agony that surged as their cries crescendoed into an unbearable howl. She closed her eyes, her heart thrumming with fear and determination. If she didn't act, they would be lost. "Come on," she shouted, pulling Ethan as she ran toward the pulsing symbols. The air crackled with tension, darkness clawing at their heels. "Mom, it's too late," Ethan screamed, and Claire felt ice slice through her veins. "Not yet," she howled, pushing forward into the unknown, hoping against hope that the weight of their despair wouldn't consume them whole. But something racked her mind. What if unbinding meant losing Ethan forever? The shadows writhed, whispering, "Dare you leave the truth behind?" As Claire reached for the nearest symbol, she felt a chill bite into her skin, an omen of the agonizing choice that lay ahead. Would she dare pull the threads of reality, or would darkness claim them both? Something shifted in the air, something heavy and ominous. The walls groaned, and the whispers turned to laughter, mocking her as dread set in. She was running out of time. The moment Claire's fingers brushed against the symbol, an electric surge coursed through her body, felt both empowering and frightening. Ethan clung to her waist, his little frame trembling against her, a fragile anchor in a sea of chaos. The symbol glowed, pulsing in response to her touch, and for a fleeting second, Claire felt a sense of hope until the laughter hit them like a wave. The creature's face twisted, reveling in their fear. "You think that will save you?" it taunted, its voice slithering around them. The shadows elongated, ready to swallow them whole. "Hold on tight," Claire shouted, yanking Ethan closer as she yanked her hand away from the symbol. A dark gust of wind erupted, forcing them backward, and the walls seemed to pulse with immense fury. The echoes multiplied, a cacophony of sorrow woven with despair, making Claire's head spin. "Mom, it's too loud. I can't hear," Ethan cried, hands pressed over his ears. "Just keep looking at me," she yelled, scanning the walls for another symbol, one that might be more than just a faint glimmer of salvation. But then the cruel shadows thickened, forming a grotesque visage of what could only be described as 1,000 tortured souls melded into one. The grotesque face loomed closer, dark eyes boring into her, alive with malice. "Remember her face, Claire?" It hissed with a voice like gravel underneath a boot. "She wants to come home, will you let her?" "No," Claire shouted, summoning her courage against the torrent of memories colliding in her mind. Flashes of laughter, joy, sorrow, each memory played like a film strip in her mind, brightening and dimming, tormenting her with regret. A face she once loved stared back at her, not through the veil of innocence, but marred by the darkness of the past. Ethan's wide eyes filled with terror. "Mom, stop looking." His voice was frantic, jolting her back to the moment, saving her from drowning in nostalgia's grasp. She tore her gaze from the shadowy apparition, focused on the grim reality before them. "Look, there," she pointed, spotting a second symbol, brighter than the others, glistening at the far end of the room, stained in eerie light. Time ticked away like grains of sand rushing through an hourglass. "Come on." Claire bolted toward it as dread clawed at her heels. Shadows surged after them, a tide of despair taking shape in their wake. "This way," she urged Ethan, but fear had rooted his feet momentarily. "Mom!" Ethan's fragile voice called out, causing her heart to twist. Claire ran back and scooped him up, a surge of determination fueling her every step as darkness lashed out, faint tendrils brushing her skin like icy fingers seeking her. The symbol pulsed erratically, and as they reached it, a blinding light erupted, illuminating the room in a flicker. The laughter ceased, replaced by a deafening silence that weighed on Clara's heart like a boulder. But before the light could engulf them, the laughter returned louder, more menacing. "You think you can unlock the truth? You don't even know what it is." Claire hesitated, terror gripping her as the creature reformed before her, this time revealing the true horror. It was not a singular entity but a collective of all the children she had mourned. They were connecting with her, reaching out, fractured memories stirred. "What if unbinding meant sacrificing my child?" she thought, the ultimatum sinking deep into her spine, freezing her. Ethan squirmed in her arms, eyes wide with confusion. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Nothing. We have to go," Claire stammered, knowing the weight of the choice layered on her like a shroud. As the shadows closed in, beckoning her to choose, the darkness vibrating with malignant need, she felt the pull of both the past and the immediate future hanging in the balance. Struggling against the weight of anguish, Claire's eyes darted between the symbol and the encroaching shadows. Fear clouded her judgment, and with each heartbeat, she felt the whispers trade places with the cries of the children. Her heart raced with an impossible choice looming larger than life. "Mom, what does unbinding mean?" Ethan asked, voice small, innocent yet heavy with fear. "I don't know," she whispered, despair spiraling in her gut. "But we're going to find out, not just for their survival, but for the truth that may either set them free or bind them forever." As the darkness surged with renewed vigor, Claire realized they had but moments. What truth would she dare unearth when everything was at stake? The moment Claire crossed the threshold into the light, panic clawed at her throat. The blinding glare enveloped her, making her wonder if they were stepping into safety or deeper into the abyss. Ethan squirmed in her arms, his small body trembling, instinctively tightening his grip around her neck. "Mom, I don't like it here," he whispered, voice barely audible above the rush of wind that whipped around them like banshees wailing. Claire felt the shadows consuming the edges of the light, creeping closer, devouring the warmth like a ravenous beast. "Just hold on tight, Ethan. We need to." Before she could finish, the brightness flickered. Shadows slithered back, taking their place. In that moment, she pulled back, blinded by unearthly fear. She had to act quickly. Reaching for the symbol embedded in the wall, she pressed her palm against the cold stone, hoping for another surge. But this time, nothing happened. The pulsing light dimmed to a faint glimmer. A chill crept up her spine, a whispering of ancient dread. "They wrap you in false hopes," the creature called, its voice laced with malice. "You cling to memories like a moth to a flame. But those flames burn." "Claire, stop!" Claire screamed, her voice trembling but firm. She needed to fight back. Ethan trembled in her arms, but she could feel a flicker of strength ignite within her. Not my son, not now. But as if sensing her defiance, the shadows thickened, swarming around them. The murkiness writhed, and before her eyes, the faces of children bubbled up from the darkness, elongated mouths holding screams, eyes filled with sorrow. They reached toward her, offering their despair like a poisoned gift. "Join us, Claire. We never left," they cried in unison, their voices blending into a sorrowful melody. "No, I won't lose him." Panic seeped into her thoughts, morphing into sheer desperation. Claire turned away from the wailing children, locking her gaze on the flickering symbol. This had to be her answer. "Let go." Ethan wailed suddenly, his urgency drawing her focus back to him. "Mom, they're pulling me. It's too scary. Close your eyes," she ordered, and he obeyed instantly, clinging to her tighter. Claire took a deep breath and focused. With newfound determination, Claire shouted, "I can unlock the truth." A ripple spread through the air, and the wall began to crack around the symbol. Colors swirled, a kaleidoscope of light fighting against the shadows. Claire felt heat radiating from the stone, a warmth that shifted the oppressive coldness clouding their surroundings. "Ethan, we need to jump." "Jump where?" His voice quivered, fear clinging to him like a desperate vine. "Into the light. We have to trust it." The shadows lunged, furious at the threat of disappearing. Claire tightened her grip, heart pounding in her chest like a caged animal. Now, with one last surge of adrenaline, she leapt. Time slowed. The shadows reached for them, fingers grasping, desperate to pull them back. In a heartbeat, everything exploded. The light engulfed them, erasing the shadowy figures. Claire felt a moment of weightlessness, pure and exhilarating, before reality crashed back. They landed on cold, hard ground. The air snapped back into chilling clarity. Around them stood an endless expanse of darkness capped by pinpricks of light stars born out of nothing. But there was something more. A rustling, unsettling whisper echoed as shapes moved just out of sight. "What happened?" Ethan's small voice quaked, breaking the oppressive silence. "I don't know," Claire murmured, scanning their surroundings. Faint silhouettes darted in the shadows, figures that didn't belong there, whispering secrets in a language she didn't understand. Then she spotted it, off in the distance. The glimmer of another symbol, pulsating with a rhythm that echoed her heartbeat. "That's it," she breathed. "We have to get to it." But before she could move, an ominous laugh rippled from the void, chilling her blood. "Ah! Claire, do you think you've escaped? The truth is closer than you think." The ground beneath them began to tremble, and dread tightened its grip around her heart. "Mom, what is happening?" Ethan's voice was tense, afraid. "I don't know. Just run." But run where? With imminent danger encroaching closer and the shadows whispering, Claire refused to back down. They were far from safe, and she could sense the real nightmare was only just beginning. What truth would she be forced to confront next? The tremors beneath their feet became a full-blown quake, throwing Claire and Ethan off balance. Panic surged. "Keep moving," she yelled, pulling Ethan close. The foreboding laugh echoed again, deeper now, as if the very ground was mocking them. They stumbled through the darkness, their breath coming in gasps. Claire spotted flashes of movement in the corners of her vision. Were the shadows watching? Waiting? "Mom!" Ethan cried, his little voice trembling as he darted ahead, eyes wide with terror. But Claire couldn't let him go too far. "Wait, stay close." The pulsating symbol was still their beacon, but it felt miles away. Each step felt like running in molasses, as if the shadows were thickening around them, slowing their every move. "Do you see them?" Ethan's voice was a frantic whisper now. He pointed into the blackness. Claire squinted, her heart racing. Then she saw them, figures that looked just like children, their faces painfully familiar. In their eyes, she saw the same despair she had glimpsed before. It was as if they were fragments of every child she'd ever seen, all twisted and darkened. "Run faster." Claire tugged Ethan's hand, but doubt gnawed at her. Were they leading them into danger or guiding them to safety? Help us! Claire! Help us! They chanted, a choir of despair mingling with the laughter that surrounded them, the sound penetrating her very soul. Each step grew heavier, the air colder. No! Claire shouted, tearing her gaze away from the wails. We're not stopping. The symbol throbbed ahead, a promise hidden in its glow. They had to reach it. Mom, Ethan's voice shook. I'm scared. Just hold on. She felt like she was losing him as fear wound tighter around her, threatening to pull him away. In a sudden burst, the lights flickered, rising and falling like a heartbeat. Claire could see the hollow shapes morphing into a dark void, their edges pooling like ink on water. She lunged toward the symbol, desperation fueling her actions. But as they approached, the ground opened before them, a gaping chasm that split the earth like a wound. Claire skidded to a halt, pulling Ethan back just in time. The laughter grew louder, a cacophony of torment echoing from the depths below. Jump! A voice called from the void. Claire recognized it, a voice she had longed to hear, twisted and coated in darkness. Mom, please! Ethan cried, his grip tightening. The shadows swirled around the chasm, reaching for them in frantic tendrils. Claire's heart raced. We'll find another way, she said. But doubts gnawed at her. There was no other way, was there? The ground shook violently, and cracks began to spiral outwards, threatening to swallow them whole. She felt dizzy, caught in a whirlwind of fear and despair. Suddenly, Ethan screamed. Mom! They want me! He was being pulled towards the abyss, his feet slipping over the jagged edge. No! Claire lunged, grabbing his wrist just in time. But in that moment of desperation, she felt an intense pull from below, as if unseen hands were grasping at both of them, calling them to join the darkness. Let them go, Claire! The shadows hissed, a chorus of voices blending into one. They are ours now. Her mind blanked with horror, and for a split second, she was paralyzed by choice. Could she really give up Ethan to keep herself safe? No! Claire shouted again, throwing all her strength into her grip. Not my son. Never. With a violent heave, she pulled Ethan back, feeling the weight of countless souls pressing down on her. The ground beneath them rumbled fiercely, fissures widening as the chasm begged them to dive into its depths. I won't lose you, Claire cried defiantly, and in that instant of fierce resolve, the shadows recoiled, momentarily stunned. Ethan looked up at her, eyes wide and full of wonder. But Mom, what's next? And then she saw it. There was something right behind them, a figure emerging from the darkness, a shape dressed in tattered clothes, its face obscured by shadow. Turn around, it beckoned, voice laced with sweetness and malice all at once. Claire's heart stopped. What would they find if they turned? With the abyss behind and the figure approaching, she had to decide: quickly turn towards the new fear, or fight against the chilling abyss that craved them. What truth lays just beyond the edge? Claire's pulse raced as she surveyed the bleak expanse that surrounded them. The chasm gaped like a hungry maw behind them, the darkness unfurling like tendrils of smoke, while that sinister figure beckoned. Fear clawed at her throat, but she knew this was a moment of reckoning. Ethan, listen, she said, squaring her shoulders against the unknown that lay before them. We need to face this together. His small hand trembled in hers, but a flicker of understanding passed through his fearful expression. Together. The determination in his voice ignited hope. Maybe this was how they confront the shadows that tormented them, by embracing their fears rather than running from them. Slowly, they turned to face the figure, shadows coiling around it like smoke. As they stepped forward, the figure emerged clearer. A girl, no older than Ethan, her skin pale and eyes deep with sorrow. She was bound by chains that glimmered with unearthly light, but her expression was one of yearning rather than malice. Help me, she pleaded, her voice still and haunting, echoing around them like a faint ghostly whisper. Free us all. Who are you? Claire asked, gripping Ethan's hand tighter. I was lost too, the girl replied, her eyes searching theirs. We were all lost, but together, we can unbind the chains that bind us. And what do we need to do? Claire's heart tightened, Fearing but willing to know, with a somber grace, the girl gestured to her own chains. You have to face what you fear truly. The innocence that was lost, the love that was forgotten. Only that can free us. Claire recognized the weight of the girl's words. The burden of every lost child's hope now rested on their shoulders. Could confronting her past really help her son? Help them both escape this nightmare? As the whispers swirled around them, wrapping her in a chaotic embrace, Claire felt those chains of suffering tightening yet again. I won't abandon you, Claire replied fiercely. Let us face it together, Ethan. Whatever it takes. Ethan nodded, his eyes wide but resolute. Together. With every ounce of strength she had, Claire closed her eyes and steadied her breath, recalling the haunting memories buried deep within the laughter of loved ones, and the warmth of joy, tinged now with a sorrowful edge. She saw the faces of those children in the shadows, locked away in sorrow, aching to be free. I'm sorry, she whispered, a surge of emotion threatening to overflow. I'm so sorry. As she opened her eyes, the darkness around them shifted, reflecting her honesty. The girl's chains rattled softly, a spark igniting in the spaces where shadows lingered. You are strong, she said, her voice warming, lifting like morning sunlight. Love transcends the darkness. Surprisingly, Claire felt a ripple of hope. I can help you all, she proclaimed, and in that moment, the room began to shimmer, pulsating with energy that emanated warmth and light. Now, let go of your fear, the girl urged. Claire and Ethan, side by side, reached out, fingers brushing against the chilling cold of the darkness surrounding them. Claire extended her heart, pouring out every sorrow, every regret, mingling it with unconditional love for her son and each lost soul. As if on cue, Ethan mirrored her, his small hands clasping tight together with the girl's ethereal fingers. The chains erupted with vibrant light, each link igniting a brilliant flash that shattered the suffocating tendrils of darkness swirling around them. One by one, the anguished faces emerged, children, desperate to escape the bindings of their sorrow. Join us, Claire cried, drawing strength from the resolve she felt in the room. They were not alone, nor were they abandoned. Instead, love bridged the chasm separating them from hope. The cacophony of screams turned into soothing melodies, entwining their voices in harmony, while the shadows slowly dissipated, fading like mist in sunlight. Together, the girl chimed as her chains melted away, freeing her spirit. Together, and with that final push, an explosion of colors surged through the chamber, enveloping them in a blinding aura of light. In an instant, Claire and Ethan felt themselves lifted, the darkness dissolving around them. They were not just escaping. They were beloved, surrounded by warmth, by countless lost souls finding their way home as the blinding light began to ease. They found themselves back in the school hallway, gasping for breath. The air was crisp and light, the heaviness gone, replaced by the sweet scent of summer flowers blooming outside the windows. Ethan pulled back, looking at his mother with wide eyes filled with wonder. Did we do it? Yes, Claire breathed, relief washing over her. We faced it together and we freed them. A collective sigh of relief echoed in the stillness around them, and as they stepped outside into the warmth, she felt a lingering presence beside them, a whisper of love from those they aided, surrounding them like a protective cloak. Somber notes of laughter floated through the air as they walked away from the haunting shadows. They were no longer tied to the past. Instead, they were free, alive, illuminated by hope. They left the school behind, forever changed but moving toward a brighter future hand in hand, leaving the darkness to slowly fade away. As they disappeared into the golden hues of sunset, Claire knew that love had triumphed over despair. The truth they sought was not just to survive, but to cherish every moment they had together, each memory as luminous as the light that set them free. And from that day forward, they would value each whisper of joy, never taking for granted the beauty of fleeting moments shared together. So, if you felt that spine-chilling terror and shared our journey tonight, remember, show your support. Subscribe immediately so you don't miss out on future spine-tingling stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to connect and spread the thrill. Let us keep the fire burning.